My name is Brian Fagan. I was born, as is obvious, in England, but after I went to Cambridge University and studied archaeology, I went to Africa and worked in Zambia and then in East Africa for 7 years, working out in the field, doing about 9 months field work a year, working in museums, working on heritage. And then political circumstances changed, and I got a visiting professorship at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. I did that for a year, and then by chance I got a permanent job as a professor of anthropology at the University of California in Santa Barbara, where I spent 36 years. Many societies in the past, until probably about 3,000 years ago, and in fact in many parts of the world even today, treat water with great respect. Why? They know the supply is short. They know there were going to be years when there were droughts, and they believe that the control of these water supplies is in the hand of supernatural forces, or in the hands of their ancestors who went before them. And the whole atmosphere surrounding water is one of respect and care. When you get to the Romans, you get to aqueducts which flow permanently. And the moment you have water flowing permanently, the equation kind of changes, because you're looking at permanent water. It's always there. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to necessarily conserve it. And when that happens, you get in a situation rather like ours today, where you turn on the faucet or you have a shower, there's the water. And you don't think about it. And it's cheap and it's accessible. One of the reasons I got to write this book, and I asked them why, was they said, we think human nature has not changed, which turned out to be true. And they said, our biggest problem is to convince people that we are short of water and that they must conserve it. And they said, that's our biggest challenge. So we want to know if there's something we can learn from history about this. And what we can learn from history. And what was wonderful was when I finished, they asked me to come back and tell them what I had learned. And which was a nice way to say thank you to them, because they changed my life. And at the end, they said, that's cool. We really have learned some things here about reverence and entitlement, because we're going into a future where water is going to have market value, and where you're going to pay a great deal more for water in places like Nevada, California, than we pay today. Why? Because the forces of the marketplace will come into play. We expect water and we assume it will be there. This for us is, given the fact there is no more water in the world, a dangerous assumption unless we develop new ways of making better use of the water we have. And this is the big challenge, is water management, conservation. That involves, and as I said earlier in our lecture today, it's like persuading someone to give up smoking or drinking, where you're dealing with an addiction. We're addicted to water. And in a way, we've got to move away from that and think out new ways of doing this. Changing human attitudes, very hard. Do you turn off the faucet when you brush your teeth? How much gas do you use? What car do you drive? What distances do you drive? Could you bicycle or walk when you drive? Do you insulate your house? Or have you got a lawn when you live in a dry environment? I mean, these are the sort of, they sound like silly questions, but they're not. They're living sustainably with the earth. And if enough of us do it, it will make a difference. And the same applies to companies, oil companies, agricultural concerns, and all of this. It's a question of us slowly changing human behavior. And will we do it? Yeah, we will. We have to. I think we can look into the future and see some things that either need to happen or will happen. The most crying need with water, beyond conservation and changing that behavior, is planning for the long term. And I'm not talking about the next election cycle. I'm not talking about 5 years. I'm talking about 100 to 150. Our children, our great-grandchildren. And one of the hardest things to persuade either taxpayers or farmers, and let alone politicians, is to look that far ahead. And where this happens, there are rich rewards. But the rewards aren't for you and me, they're for our grandchildren. And in countries like Belgium, people are beginning to do this, and it's very exciting because they will build a flood control project and they will say, aha, yes, but in 50 years, what's the impact going to be on the economy, on recreation, on shipping, on whatever? And if you do that, immediately you're changing a lot of equations. But the biggest dynamic is that of major catastrophe, extreme weather events. Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans is a good example. The Cyclone Bowler in Bangladesh is another one, where an event happens, say it floods land, it pollutes groundwater, it ruins thousands of acres of crops, and people are hungry and they die. They die from sea surges, they die from hunger. When that happens, if you are lucky, you get an impact politically, because things have to be done. The issue is to turn that into a long-term change. If you look at the future, and this is very much true of water, it's true of sea defenses, it's true of all kinds of climate change, and other things too. Alternative systems of transport. There are two elements. One is the technology. And we, as Americans or as whoever you like, are very good at technology. I mean, for example, within 50 years, a substantial proportion of the water supplies, the drinking water in the United States, is going to be recycled water which has been in somebody's toilet. That water is purer than the water in the aquifer. Why? Because we've developed an affordable technology that does it. We are geniuses at technology. And everyone says, oh, we'll solve that problem with technology. That's not the issue. The issue are the human beings who are behind that technology, who create it, and above all, use it economically and sensibly. And that is a lesson we've learned with fossil fuels, we've learned with all kinds of innovations. And really the future depends on how we as human beings behave and how we apply the technology. We face extraordinary challenges. And one of the biggest challenges we face is to take actions now to protect our grandchildren and indeed protect the future of the world and the country. And these decisions depend on us as humans. And I'm optimistic because in the past we've solved problems. Agreed, they're not on the scale we have now. But I think in the long term, we will find solutions. The price in human lives and economically may be enormous, but we will survive. Why? Because we're human beings, and I'm optimistic. If we can't solve the problems, nothing else will.